What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? Welcome back to another episode of All Things Behind the Scenes with your girl, Nina Payne. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Like I've said before, this show is about all things events. We talk about what happens before the event, after the event, during the event. We talk to amazing professionals who manage all the details behind the scenes to make sure the event happens right every single time. And then we also talk about how to navigate the business world of events. And so we talk about all that here. So stay tuned for all of that. So now, developing and implementing large scale events is not an easy thing to do. Take it from me. You have to be really engaged and really enjoy it and really love it. And so, our next guest makes event production seem really easy. She's a huge help to so many, especially me, and some of the events that I've been able to do. Her energy is infectious, and I always enjoy working with her. She's an ultimate professional, but always likes to have a good time now. Don't get me twisted. She's currently a partner of Solution Architects. She's dropped some really good gems in this interview that we had. So please enjoy the interview with none other than Sommer Woods. What up, though?
Oh, Nina. Oh, I'm so excited. I love the intro. Come on, Burst. Come on, Burst. It was great. It was
You
great.
like that? You like that?
I did. The little music, I was ready to get my whole house heads on
This
jam
is
on.
what I'm saying. You can't
Yeah,
go
yeah.
wrong with nice little house groove.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It was a groove. I appreciated that.
So look, I didn't want to get started. Well, I was trying to talk about how we met. And so, we did an event with project producers called Kim Live at Mac and Third. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about it all the time. And I want to believe that's when we met, which
Mm-hmm.
is we were trying to navigate all of the things that had to happen in the city of Detroit, permitting and all the things. And my partner Will Burnett would come and have all the crazy paperwork for the vendors and and all the things. And you would help us to kind of figure out how to do all that. Is that where we met?
That is actually how we met, which is crazy, right? Because there's so many people you like, especially in this space, because the world's intertwined in so many different ways. But yes, that is how we met.
And then we and over the years of when you were at the city of Detroit, but you were also a mentor for my daughter in the midnight golf
I
program.
know. I know. So you're trying to get me sentimental. It's cool.
Yeah, because she talked really highly of you, and when she finally met you, I said, "Summer, I know Summer." Then it was like, okay, let me talk to Summer about how to help her navigate through this program. And actually, Alex is one of our producers for the show. Say, what up, Alex?
Oh,
Hey,
is Alex?
Summer.
Oh, Alex is there. Hey, fool, hey.
See, she was trying to be quiet. I had to call her out because we just don't do that here. We got all things behind the scenes.
You
I'm
know
allowed
what
to
I'm
turn the
saying?
camera around on her so you can see
She
her.
a whole grown up with a whole job. Ain't that
A
something?
whole grown up with a whole job, and we are trying. There she is.
Oh, look at the baby.
She's gonna hate me for that one. But thank you
She's
for
so
coming on
cute.
camera, Alex, and saying
She's
hello.
so cute. She's
Saying
so
hello.
cute.
And so let's just back up a little bit just in the event space because as far as I know, you've always done events when I came
Yeah,
into this space. And so
yeah.
what do you love about events? And I'll back up and say, I think it's a space that you have to love, like, because it comes with all of the extras, right? Constant change and sleepless nights and, managing VIP folks with all the different asks that they might have. What do you love about this field?
I think because it's so different. You know what I mean? It's so every day is something different as you prepare. The day of it's not mundane. Like
Mm.
I don't think I could ever be in a job where you're doing the same thing every day. That would drive me crazy. So I definitely love just the variation and just the diversity of things. I like the craziness that happens. I like the calmness that happens. But most importantly, it's just a mix of everything. That is nothing is the same, and then the energy. It's an adrenaline rush. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like people don't
Mhm.
even talk about that side of it, but it is a real adrenaline rush. You all ready and going, and then when it's over, you like, dang, it's over. You know what I'm saying? But I would definitely say it's adrenaline rush for sure.
It definitely is a adrenaline rush. What would you say, like, is the most important characteristics a planner needs to have in order to be able to survive in this event production space?
I mean, I think it's important to be detailed, right? Like
Mhm.
I think because there's so many things that changes at any given moment, sometimes people can be so tunnel vision and linear that when it's time to pivot, they can't. And you don't always have the opportunity
Mm.
to plan on the pivot. One, I think critical thinking is huge. As you know,
Yes.
even after in our most recent lives, or even when you all doing work with Triumph Church, logistics is
Mhm.
one of those things that you pivot, right? Like if you don't have any critical thinking skills to understand in terms of like a safety issue or an emergency
Yeah.
or trying to move a VIP in a certain way. So critical thinking, being detailed, and just being able to be flexible and have good energy, I think is important too. Because it ain't nothing worse than working with someone on the event side that's also got some stank energy too. I'm
Say
just
that
saying. I'm
for the
like, how you
people in
gonna
the
be
back.
stressed? How you gonna be stressed and you in this stressful job? You can't be. You know what I'm saying? How you gonna be staying when the people came out volunteering and you gonna go up on the volunteer? Don't even get me started. But yes,
Ooh, we gotta talk
yeah.
about that one because I
Understand.
think a lot of times I think there's a couple different personalities, right? So I
Mhm.
think don't get confused with somebody who is focused on doing a good job, right? They're
Right.
not, they're in the moment, as
Oh yeah.
opposed to dealing with people who are in events who are just nasty,
Yes.
or power
Yes.
hungry.
Yes.
Like I'm doing
Yes.
this, you sit over there, kind of thing. Have
Yeah.
you had to deal with those experiences?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that sometimes people, because you could be in some events in some environment that guests or people, that's attending can bring an energy that you have to counter. So I get it, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? And to your point, I think the idea of being focused, like that is important. Like sometimes you could just be trying to get something done, trying to be in the
Mhm.
moment that people can take that as a negative or actually be offended.
Yeah.
But it is a matter of trying to find a balance between, and that's why I always try to make sure that even when I'm in the moment, it's like, hey, give me a second, let me come back. I never want someone to feel as if that I'm being abrasive because sometimes you can within this space. And I could say, in my 20s when I was first doing this, I probably was a little bit more intense. Now I'm like, we ain't saving lives, people. It ain't like I'm a physician, somebody
We
on
curing
the
cancer.
operating table. Listen, we not saving lives. We not saving lives,
We're
people. We
not.
just not.
We're not.
Yeah,
And putting it in perspective, because I tell my team all the time, it's not rocket science. We're not
yeah,
curing cancer here.
yeah,
We're really throwing a
yeah, for
party. We're making
sure,
sure everybody have a great time doing this particular thing. But it's really not that. So let's not be that
for
intense
sure,
about it. Let's be
for
focused
sure.
and do a good job. But come on now. Come
Yeah,
on now. Let's let's
yeah.
let's bring it down a notch.
I agree. I
So
agree.
so so talk about I know we work together at Triumph Church and Logistics Space,
Yeah.
in such a conglomerate of campuses that they have. So the CG Trade has they're not I think the biggest church here in the CG Trade right now is Triumph Church with multiple campuses and a lot of logistics around that. And so in doing something like that, how do you make sure that all of that stuff comes together for a huge event? Like, what is your first, second, third thing that you look at?
Yeah, it's so funny because I remember when I started volunteering doing logistics, I was living in Houston for a church. It was a mega church I went to in Houston. And then when I moved here to Detroit, first started going to Triumph. And so Pastor Kenlock heard that I did events and then I just got sucked in. And
Sucked
one of
in.
the sucked, okay, just but one of the things that was interesting is I laugh because I'm like, yo, church people can really make you grow, right?
See, I was gonna say
So
that, but I'm glad you
it's
brought that up.
listen. So when you think about some of the logistical, the larger events, it does matter the type of events because who you're serving, what's happening that day,
Mm,
what that client is, what the project is. And I will say for church folk, you're dealing with people who are volunteering in ministry, so you got to make sure you're balancing those dynamics of people who are volunteering. You're dealing with the sensitivities of people that are coming to a new church for the first time, or having a spiritual experience for the first time. So you have to be very sensitive to that,
mm,
right? And so with that, there's a lot that comes into those logistics. You're dealing
yes.
with personalities, you're dealing with people movement. Pastor Kenlock does a lot of things back to back because he wants to be able to move people in and out in the right amount of time. But with that comes a lot of just how does that work? Ingress, egress, where you moving,
Right.
where they parking, where you blocking spaces off. And I would say that's the same for any event. The difference is, like I said, with church, you just have to be able to balance that you're in a spiritual home, versus where you might be somewhere else, doing a corporate event or something else,
Mhm.
that the energy can be slightly different for sure.
I think that's a really great point because I think when we started doing church events. You would say that over the years, I've always done some sort of church event, and I had to talk to the team about kind of expectations. There's a little bit of entitlement, like they want to park in the same
Mhm.
spot every time, they want to walk through the same door, they have this whole thing, and they own it's their church, right?
Yep.
Their pastor, their
Yep.
and so I had to like really talk to the staff about how to manage that. It comes and you have to be very sensitive to
Yep.
that. And I'll tell you that, in managing artists and moving through gospel and now in, R&B and even in the event space, I love my church folks, but they could be, they could be
Baby,
trying.
let me
Just,
tell you
they could
something.
just they could push
Baby,
your buttons.
baby. I remember, and so I volunteered. That's one of my ministry and to give back to my, to my church and one of my things in terms of just a spiritual donation of time. So I first started dealing with the gospel artists. I
Mm,
said, "Oh, you supposed to
mm,
love Jesus? Really?"
mm,
It's a couple
mm,
people to this day. I just will not listen to their songs because I'm like, you was not spiritual.
mm.
Yeah, it is different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It is, and I think the idea of what you're saying in the sense of like people's expectations, the same door, going through the entry. Yeah, no, for sure, right? That
Mhm.
it is, it is important to really understand that for sure.
Yeah, and and just I say that to say that, you know, it's important to know your audience. It's important
Absolutely,
to know
absolutely,
your client, the expectations,
absolutely.
who's attending, so that you know how to treat them. You know how to manage and to pivot when you need to
Yep,
pivot. And it's
absolutely.
important just to have the right people in place. Not everybody on my team I would assign to work at a church event
Yep,
because there's just a different type of person that I would want to make sure, is taken care of, in
correct.
that aspect. And so that goes
Yep,
across the board when you're talking about staffing and, whether it's a corporate event or a VIP experience, there's certain
yep,
people that can work those events or that can manage those events that are different than other people that can. And so it's important to know those differences when you're talking about building a business.
absolutely. I agree.
So let's talk about how you manage. So when you manage an event, are you a paper and notebook person? Do you use Excel spreadsheets? Do you have like some major, C event, Salesforce? Like what tools
Uh,
do you use like to
so
do
it's
your thing?
so when I first started in events, I was an intern. So first, I didn't even understand event management and what it was. I grew up playing golf, and so because I grew up playing golf, which is funny because everybody's like, I was like, yeah, I learned how to play golf in black ass Detroit, Michigan, off of 7 Mile and Woodward. Okay, so it was a culture shock when I went to go work at the PGA Tour. That was one of my first jobs outside of college, and when
Okay.
I got the opportunity as an intern, that was my first exposure to event management. So
Mm,
it was a beautiful foundation because it is the epitome of of events. You're setting up a course to make it look like a golf tournament. It is nothing
mhm.
but a blank palette. And so that's the reason why a lot of events I like to do is when you do have build outs. White boxes
Yeah.
are cool, but I do like the challenges of build outs and being able to understand what that looks like. And
Tell
so
tell
one of
people
my
what build outs are.
so when you basically have like for festivals, so you start
Mhm,
with just a parking lot or a park, and then
mhm,
you're putting up the tents and the porta potties and the tables and the chairs and the directional signage versus if you go to the Marriott and just do something out of a ballroom, right?
mhm.
Like you're really looking to do a build out. And
Right.
one of my first supervisors at the PJ Tour, she told me never come into my office without something to write on because after something's always happening, it's always going. You got to be able to take out the pad, write down a note because you're going to get pulled into it to so many places. So I'm still old school. I still have my binder with my checklist, my little boxes. My interns tease me. One of my interns who now is doing her thing in the multicultural space for Cadillac, but she was my intern at Super Bowl, and so she teases me all the time because she's like, I still got my action item list with my boxes that I draw and then cross them out. So I still
So let's back up. So you say are
mhm.
you writing things out that you draw a box
Yes, I know.
and check it
Listen,
off? No,
because
I
here's
think
the thing: I start with like a nice Word document with the boxes so I can check them off, make sure it's done, and my action items.
Mhm.
But as the day go, yes, I
Yeah.
draw my boxes. I need to feel accomplished when
Right,
I
right.
when I mark it off. I feel accomplished.
See, but
Yeah,
here's the thing, and what I try to tell everybody is that everything doesn't work for every person. You have to
right.
find
What
what
works for
tool
you?
works best for you, right? And so if you
Absolutely.
are writing down in a notebook and drawing boxes to be able to check those bad boys off, then God bless you. and doing all the
I feel like that's a
things.
little shade. I feel
I
like it's a little
no,
slight
none
little
none
shade in
at
it. Oh,
all,
okay.
none at
You was
all.
like
Look,
your little
I work with
boxes.
I work with so many people in all different types of things.
Yeah.
Paper and pencil. I got
Yep.
somebody who just highlights everything,
Yep.
to the top event management software. We use a variety of different things depending on the client, and we can, shape shift, if you will, the best that works best with whatever client we're working
Absolutely.
with. And sometimes it's
Absolutely.
writing it down in a notebook. Sometimes it's rewriting the notes, right, in
Right.
order to make sure it all comes together. So I'm no shade whatsoever, because I want people to understand that you got to do what's best for you. As long as
Absolutely.
you don't miss any of the details and you are exceeding the expectations of your clients and that sort of thing, then who cares?
Absolutely. And I mean,
Because
now I'm an Excel queen though. I love an Excel spreadsheet. I will pivot table like a mug, you know what I mean? So I do love Excel spreadsheets. I was actually, when I was interning in college, I was working as an analytics intern at General Motors, and that's how I became the Excel queen. So it's funny when I bring like interns in, or I'm talking to young people about, and they're like, I do Google Sheets. I'm like, that's cool, but do you know how to use Google Sheets for real? Like, let's talk about it.
can we do a
So
formula?
listen, because we're gonna have a whole tutorial on this Excel. I'm just saying. So yeah, I do, to your point, obviously making sure the clients has access to the information. So
Hmm.
if that's through Dropbox, if that's usually I use a lot, Google Drive and things like that. So even though
Yeah,
I'm still old school with my personal sheet, from a team perspective, we do use, the Google Suite. The G Suite is my friend for sure.
yeah, yeah. We are a
It's my
big
best friend.
Google Suite
Yeah.
team as well. So Google Drive. We also have to use Teams because City Detroit uses Teams.
I know in
Not my
teams,
preference,
I'm
but
like, yeah, it's a trip.
just saying, just
Yeah.
saying. Okay, so let's talk about the actual events.
Mhm.
In that, can you think about the most difficult or challenging event that you've done and why?
I think one of the most, and the crazy thing, Nina, is that it wasn't even a hard event.
Yeah.
It was literally an educational kind of seminar workshop.
Mhm.
And it was difficult because the client was difficult.
Mm.
The client was a misogynist.
Mm.
There were certain things within proving um, that that we knew our stuff and why we were there and on the topic. Because I think that sometimes, because coming especially from the sports industry, there's sometimes that dynamic of gender that shows up,
Mhm.
genderism, right?
Yes.
Sexism that shows up
Yeah.
in that. And so a lot of times you're always proving to a client potentially like, hey, like this ain't our first rodeo. Like we only produced one of the biggest sporting events in the world, Super Bowl 40. Like it ain't,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
I will say that was the worst because of the client. And it wasn't, and it's because a lot of it is that you didn't necessarily feel appreciated because of the experience and the
Mm.
work that had to be done. And I think it's sometimes that arrogance of I'm paying you and this is what I needed to this is what we needed to look like versus trying to say, hey, we are going to understand the value that you all bring. And a lot of times, as you understand, we could tell clients all the time, like this is not going to work. And then when it doesn't work,
Mhm.
then they looking crazy. You see what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say? But I
Mhm.
told you that it wasn't going to work. But sometimes I will say definitely in the sports space, sexism could show up, a little bit of misogyny. So I
Yeah.
would definitely say that was the most challenging event of a client that I would never work with ever again, ever.
And here's the thing, you get to make that choice after, right?
Listen, because as an entrepreneur, that
Mhm.
is by far the blessing.
Yes.
Is to say who I want to work with and who I don't want to work with
Yep.
is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And I think that people take that for granted. But it's like, why you so busy trying to interview me? I'm interviewing you and your team, and if we even want to work with y'all, because events are fluid. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you're doing things, you got to have you understand that there are things that are in your control and some that are not. But if I have a client that could be, that's why I don't do weddings. It's like I have no desire.
Say
Listen,
that.
it ain't my ministry. I know there's certain, it's like that ain't it. So yeah,
Right.
I do think that by far was the most challenging. And I always have to bite my tongue when they mention their names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not gonna call anybody out on the show. It's not that type of
Yeah, I
show.
know,
But I
I
did
know.
but the
Understood.
lesson here is,
Absolutely.
when you own your own company, you get to really you can choose your clients as well,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And every event planner, director, producer, manager is not meant for every client.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I think, you have to interview them like they're interviewing you. I think that's
Absolutely.
key, what you said there. So let's talk about, in difficult clients. How do you navigate? Well, let's talk about sexism, right? And
Mhm.
so do you experience anything in addition to that, being a woman in this particular industry,
The
corporate events?
the irony of it is that women heavily populate this space, so you don't really experience it all the time.
Mhm.
I have experienced it more when it's a certain industry or connected, right, where there is a more
Mm.
male dominated space, like sports or automotive. You know what I mean? Like you kind of that's kind of more what the vibration the field is. I wouldn't I can't, because I think a lot of times people feel as if this is a safe space and they're okay with us in this space. Now, I will say, when you think about production houses, big production houses here nationally, most of them are owned by white men.
Yes.
And so that's always interesting, because what I will say, unfortunately, is in this market a lot of times, because there are some dope sisters, and sisters specifically, like my, one of my mentors, I'm sure yours too, Mama and Gia,
Mhm.
that does their thing here. But the irony of it is that a lot of times people don't necessarily feel as if we are always capable of
Mm.
doing these larger events. And so you still have a lot of the same usual suspects of large white production houses that are
Mm.
getting opportunities. And that is frustrating. It's
Yeah.
interesting because people try to make it seem as if they own all their equipment, they're totally turnkey. And I'm trying to tell them, no, they're not. They're a GC, they're a general contractor,
Right.
basically serving as a project manager to bring it in. But there's a certain privilege in that space,
Mm.
because they're able to position in a way that I mean, it's great branding. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
great marketing. But the unfortunate part is when you have so many dope sisters and some brothers doing this work, that same lens is not given to us as we can do that. And I see that a lot. I see
Yeah.
that a lot here in Detroit specifically, and not just Detroit, but nationally as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, it kind of mirrors your DEI space, right? Where you're trying to make sure or trying to make known that, we're here, we're doing the work,
Yep.
and we don't get the
Yep.
opportunities that other organizations may get. And the
Yep.
interesting thing about that is I've gotten the calls, right? So there's this large conglomerate, and they get the deal, but then they call all the subcontractors to be able to fulfill the contract.
And that's what I'm saying. And it's
Hmm.
frustrating because I'm just trying to tell people, like, they're literally serving as a GC. Like, it's not, it's very frustrating. It's
Yeah.
very frustrating. It's very frustrating in this market when you continue to see the same things, larger events and things that are that are going on here. That we're still having the same conversations 20 years later that I've been in this market. It's mind blowing to me. It's literally mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I had that conversation with Angia. She actually was a guest on our show as well,
I
and we
love her.
talked about. I know, right? How can I not do an event show without having Angia on the show? Are you crazy?
She's the queen. She the queen mama.
And we talked about some of that, right? The
Yeah.
dynamics of corporate events in the downtown market. Because if you've been in downtown Detroit, you've experienced one of Ngia Kai's events and KSK
Mhm.
events.
Mhm.
Whether you've been at Campus Martius or on the river or any of the parks, she has been doing events in this market for a really, really long time. African World Festival, and she is a G.
Yep.
So she needs to be
Yep.
considered and consulted when events come
Mhm.
to the city. I'm just gonna put that out there like that. So and
Yep.
she talks about how difficult, it is to kind of migrate that even after she's been doing it for so many
Yep.
years.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
she's still trying to prove herself. Like,
And it's crazy
get out of
because
here with that.
and it's crazy, right? Because she's had an opportunity, working with GDP and working with Midtown Inc. and people not really know who's behind the scenes making it happen. And I remember
Yes.
one of the first times that I met Mama and Gia was when I was with the city. Actually, it might have been before then, but it might have been running around by the Super Bowl, and I was in a meeting, and here it is. I'm coming to a meeting, and this sister is got her natural hair and her cowrie shells, and she is just everything in her pure, just African beauty. And I was like, oh, she is so fresh. Like I was just so loving the fact that she just showed up
Yeah.
unapologetically Black in
Mm-hmm.
these spaces. A lot of times we don't always feel as comfortable to come in. And I remember I had a keychain. It was a cutout, a die cut of the continent of Africa, and it had Harriet Tubman in the middle. And my keychain, my keys were on the table. And Mama G was like, I like your keychain.
Harriet Tubman.
And I was like, I have been jocking you this whole meeting in my head, and you just, and, you know, because I lived I moved away for a minute when I came back to Detroit. You know, was still trying to build relationships and stuff, but it was funny because I was just so, and that's one of the things that I do love about people like Mama Gia, why she's so a jewel, is
Mm-hmm.
that she shows up unapologetic, and I think within this space, especially within events, when you show up unapologetic within that and understand what roots you, it also is what guides you and how you do your work. So even
Yes.
when you talk about like the subs, you know, being intentional, right,
Mm-hmm.
of who those subs are and how you're
Have
being
to be.
inclusive within that is very important. But I literally bow down and pay homage to just how that sister just shows up. And she gives me that, she continues to give me that same energy to be like, oh, well, if
Yeah.
she doing this, I could just roll up in here the same way and it's all good.
You know, we talked about that. She talked about how she just prefers to be comfortable, and
Yep.
so she's not the suit and tie wearer. And
Yep.
in her, I found myself because I also, I can suit tie with the best of them. I come from corporate America, but I prefer my jeans and my shirt
Absolutely.
and a polo shirt or whatever. And
Absolutely.
I prefer comfortability. And so as we get older, and all of those things happen, I see Angia walk in, and still to this day, just as comfortable and fly as she can
I
be.
know.
And
I
she
love
talked
her.
about how people will assume that she doesn't know her stuff because of that. And that makes her want to wear more comfortable clothes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I just enjoy the
Absolutely.
fact that all of us, that at least in the event space that I know and the circles I move around in this production space, show up as themselves. You've
Yeah.
always shown up as yourself, Summer. You've always been jovial, life of the party, down to earth, woman about her business
Oh,
person.
thank
And I
you.
so appreciate how you show up. And it just allows all of us to be able to continue to do that. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And that's the same. You be all cool and stuff. I be like, dang, Nina don't. Do she ever get off kilter? I'll be like, rawr, rawr. And you're like, yes, actually, we've already moved those cones out of the way and we've transitioned where that's done. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Thank you.
That's my
Appreciate
calm voice. And then when
it.
people ask you those crazy questions, my team used to be like, "That's the Nina pause," because I'll go, "Hmm," and my brain is going, "Bitch, I'm like, "See, what we need to do is
Exactly. Mhm,
that's a
mhm,
muscle that we
mhm.
learn over the years instead of me going
Absolutely.
off as I was when I was a young event planner.
Yeah,
You would have caught one. So,
for sure.
so let's talk about the business of events. And so let's talk about your transition from, I'm gonna say, corporate into owning your
Mhm.
own business. Like, talk about what that transition was, what you were doing prior to, and why you decided to jump ship and become an entrepreneur.
So it's funny because after Super Bowl, so I left the PGA Tour to go work on the Super Bowl host committee. And I'll never forget my grandmother was like, how you gonna leave this stable job with these benefits for for a job that you know that's gonna end in 3 years?
Hmm.
And I told her, I said, if I can't turn something into something after Super Bowl, then I just need to go to bed. Like just
Oh,
there, I just need to go to bed. And after Super Bowl, that was my opportunity to really get to know a lot of people, get back into the space in Detroit because I was moving here from Texas, from Houston, and so after Super Bowl, I was like, the PGA Tour and Super Bowl, even though I was working within institutions and entities, they were both very entrepreneurial. It
mm,
was small teams. We were kind of doing everything. So you had a taste of a lot of things. And so it was very natural for me to start my own business after Super Bowl.
okay.
That's when I started. That's when I started. It was first I called it Summer Solutions. I was branding my
That's
name.
right.
Yep, I was branding my name because at that point I had a lot of name recognition out of coming out of Super Bowl and so I did that. I was doing some stuff with the Jazz Fest and the
Mm.
UNCF. I did some stuff for the Detroit Belle Isle Grand Prix when it first came back
Mm.
to Belle Isle, and then from there, that's when the market kind of went crazy. Like I was doing well, like it was word of mouth. I had to do a lot of marketing. It was beautiful. But
Mhm.
then the market, that's when the market kind of crashed 2007,
Mm.
2008, around that time. That was the first thing that everybody was shutting down was special events. And
Yeah.
so unfortunately I had to, not unfortunately, because I don't look at anything as what is supposed to happen. And the
Yeah.
path for that was that I actually went and worked as an appointee for Mayor Bean at the city of Detroit.
Mm.
And that is when I worked on as a director of special events and film. That I did get to meet more people in the space, such as yourself. I got to understand the dynamics of, the city and permits and what to do, what not to do. Some of those things that we discovered, obviously, when we were working during Super Bowl, but a little bit more honed in. So I still did my business on the side, even
Mhm.
though, I didn't do it as much with the city because there was a lot of conflict of interest, and that obviously plays a role with just the city charter and all those things. But after I left the city and went to go take a full-time job working with the M1 Rail, and as you know, obviously
Right.
working in events, you touch everything. So
Yeah.
you have a whole bunch of skill sets. So people are always like, you do a lot. And I'm like, I do because I got a lot of experience. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I was
Right.
blessed to have a lot of experience because again, those opportunities were very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And so you don't have a choice because they're small teams, so you don't have a lot of money and budgets to do a lot. And so when I was working for M1 Rail, I still did some things on the side with my company. And I think the main thing that I learned from that is when I was doing it full time, I didn't have multiple streams of income.
Hmm.
I did not do a lot. I think I took for granted just the word of mouth and people just, that when the market hit, I wasn't able to really pivot in the right way
Mm.
in terms of still being an entrepreneur and maybe doing some other events that I didn't want to necessarily do. I will say that, since, especially with COVID and around that time in 1920, right before COVID, that I did come to a realization for myself. Like, I need to know what type of events I want to do and what I don't want to do. Like, I
Okay.
know I want to do, I'm really good in build outs. I want to focus on like build outs,
How
festivals,
did
and
you come to that conclusion? Did you do a board? Did you do a whiteboard pros and cons? Like, how do you figure that out?
just because the people's was great, the different clientele, I don't want to do that. That's like I don't want to do weddings. People call me
Mhm.
like, I want you to do my wedding. I'd be like, you
Mm.
know what? The
Yeah.
Lord did not put that on my heart to do no weddings.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm with you on that one.
so I think a lot of it was not necessarily, I would like to say that it was like a whole process, but it really wasn't. It
Okay.
came down to what I enjoyed the most. I
Yes.
like my brain, the way that it thinks. I'm a very complex thinker. I am a critical thinker. And so I get the joy and excitement of being able to figure stuff out and build stuff out. It gives me more creativity.
Mhm.
That's probably more of what it is that the way that my brain percolates is how I landed in that space. So that's how I transitioned, but also how I still kept it around even though I was working full time. So then when I did go back in full time entrepreneurially, I don't have one business, but I have two businesses, and so that was more strategic than last time because I,
Okay.
I love being an entrepreneur, but I wasn't strategic to have another plan last time.
So you're a full-time
Full
entrepreneur
time
now.
entrepreneur. Yeah,
And
full
how's it
time
going?
entrepreneur. It's good. I'm blessed. I still have solution. So I changed from summer solutions to solution architects because I wanted to have more of a dynamic that wasn't just a person but a team. So I do
Mhm.
have a team of people that work on different events. And again, being selective on what those events are. And then I have another company called Woods and Watts Effect that I have a partner there, Dr. Michelle Lewis Watts, who we actually met working on Super Bowl. It is a diversity, equity, and inclusion company. And
Mm.
so a lot of the, like for example, some of the things that I would not necessarily do with solution architects, but it still does tail into Woods and Watts. It makes sense. So we do like a
Okay.
racial equity summit for like New Detroit, right?
Right.
That it makes sense in terms of the movement, the logistics. But would I do a conference if it wasn't connected within the work that we do because it's an implementation, it's an actual solution for our clients? I don't know if I would, right?
Okay.
But the beautiful thing is that it works out because you have the skill set and it mixes in with the passion of,
It's huge.
equity inclusion.
It's huge to have you on
Mhm.
the team with all of the experience
Yeah.
and being able to do all the logistics for your DNI events. It's huge. It's
Yeah,
huge.
it is, and it's cool. And we've had some cool activations that we've been able to take all of our skill sets to really do some things that are very different and still being rooted in community. Still
Yeah,
being rooted in community
super
for
important.
sure. Yeah.
So let's talk about just the whole idea of going into business because it's super trendy on social media. And I asked this question of the folks that I'm interviewing because I want you to
Mhm.
give your honest opinion about the trend, right? Everybody wants to be a boss bitch or, boss babe or whatever the terms are,
Mhm.
and they make it look so easy online. What is your comment to that? How do you respond to that for somebody who's looking at that as the footprint, if you were a blueprint for getting started in business?
So I think it's hilarious. I always, I tease my young people who I mentor, because everybody's like, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, and I'm like, you have no body of work though. You have no body of work. You want to be a whole entrepreneur, but you don't
Yeah.
have no body of work. You ain't got no capital. Like I think that I love the idea of economic freedom. I love that idea. And
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is economic freedom. And I think one of my mentors who told me that years ago, she said, you know, entrepreneurship for women is transformative because it gives
Mm,
you a different level of economic freedom. It gives you another level of family freedom. It,
mm,
it, it is the highest of what that is. I didn't really understand when she said it in my 20s. I was leaving
mhm.
Super Bowl, and shout out to Tabby Fulkerson who said that. And I didn't understand it until as an adult, I get it, right? Like as an older in my, in my I'm like, okay, I get it. Like that makes sense. And so the irony of kind of this energy of what it is, they're not talking about the behind the scenes. It's everything is for the gram, everything is for TikTok, everything is for social,
Mhm.
but it's the body of work. I think it's really important for people to still absolutely have a foundation of doing something on the side while you're building up a body of work. Not stealing clients. That's important, right? Not going to, going to companies. But I also think it's also interesting to me, which I've been hearing a lot, and it's actually bothered me a lot, is I've had a couple of young people who have worked with their moms or dads or brothers in their business, and they're left after 6 months, 7 months because they felt some type of way
Mm.
that they wanted to get paid more VP. And this one of my mentees, I just was about to knock him out. He said, why am I gonna work for my brother when I could work for somebody else? I could work for somebody else and work my business on the side. Okay,
Mm,
so you okay with working for quote
mm.
unquote the man? There's y'all, but
Right.
then you say, I can't, I don't but you don't understand economic capital building with your family and what that is, and being able to parlay that. I'm sure your family member would absolutely, love
Yeah.
to show you how to, parlay into something else. I just find it very interesting. You know what I mean?
Do you feel it's just
Um,
a generational thing that where we are now with the with where people are in the millennial Z kind
I
of
don't think
space, or
it's
what do you think that is?
I think part of it is generational. I don't think it's all. I mean, because you got some other people that's just ready to pivot because they want to do something different with their career. But
Mm,
yet and still, they still don't have the skill set. They still don't have the body of work. They might have. That's the one thing that I will say, which is the other reason why I came back into the full time entrepreneurship space, because everybody was out here getting money and had businesses. I was like, hell, if these terrible people that ain't got no body of work got a whole business, I know I can do this shit full time. You see what I'm trying to say? I got a whole
So
body of work.
what do you tell them, that are looking at that and saying, "Hey, I can, they did it, I can do it. I just need to have some good ground pictures and, so, everybody got to do a photo shoot and have some fly gear and like, what do you say? Like,
you're
what
you're going
to
to get
them?"
exposed. You're going to get exposed.
Mm,
Get exposed. You're gonna still be on smaller scales of things. At the end of the day, why would you not use working at a company, working as an opportunity, as a learning ground? The
Yes.
beautiful thing about, and even in terms of like volunteering to, to serve on an event ministry at your church or your sorority fraternity or your neighborhood block club, like all of those are things that you can use as a training ground that's not going to cost you anything.
Mm,
Because when you start a business and you jack something up on the event production side of things, then it's you that's going to be responsible for that. If
mm,
somebody gets trampled, if something happens, the rig falls down, the lighting tower, whatever the case may be, now you're responsible. And oh, by the way, you ain't even got no insurance because you haven't
mm,
even gone about the right way. So
mm.
I really think that it's important for people to look at that as a training ground, that you can learn this craft on somebody else's dime. You know
I
what I
love
mean? You
that.
can you can
I love that.
learn, how to do marketing or branding or construction management or whatever. You can learn how to do it on somebody else's dime, and understanding the moonlighting clause. A lot of times people don't understand the moonlighting clause. Like if you're if
Mhm.
you're working for somebody and they tell you you can't have a side business or work for somebody else as in competition, it is important to understand the moonlighting clause. I'm never in favor of anybody signing a very restrictive moonlighting clause because it doesn't allow you to be able to have a little bit of freedom in order to that's why people come work with me. I'm like, I'm not gonna get into all that because
Yeah,
I know that my blessings is gonna come back. And at the end of the day, if you could use this for something else, then why not?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was gonna say the you mentioned being able to kind of use volunteerism to kind of hone your
Mm-hmm.
skills. And I know
Mm-hmm.
one of the places that I learned most of the stuff that I learned how to do is at church.
Yep.
It is one of the best places. I learned production, events, I
Yep.
did all their women's conferences, all their music ministry concerts. I learned sound, I learned lights, I learned video at
Mm-hmm.
church.
Mm-hmm.
It was free training, if you
Yep.
will, right?
Absolutely.
And I wanted to do a good job because these were, the messages were the important thing, right? I needed them to
Yep.
hear them, see them, feel them. And so I did all of
Absolutely.
that. And I did that for years under some really great tutelage. And so if you're looking for a space to kind of just hone your skills, I think Summer is right. Volunteer, practice. Use your church foundation, use your organization to be able to kind of volunteer for these different places to be able to kind of hone your skills. And so I think that was a great tool. And let me ask you this. So I see you out here in the streets doing all your amazing things. You're in the DEI space. I think you showed up at one of our community association meetings. I was like, what are you doing here? Summer?
That's
You're always
right. That's
popping
right.
up places. Who do people think you are as opposed to who you really are?
So my friends always sees me like, people ask me what you do, and I have no idea how to articulate what the hell you do.
That's generally the case. Yes, yeah.
I'm like, I'm not Tommy. I do have a whole job though. Like, don't play me like that. The interesting thing is I pride myself, you had mentioned earlier, like I show up unapologetic, and I pride myself on that, that I'm basically who people think I am, just in terms of
Mm,
my being, right? Now, people might not know what the hell I do. That's
mhm.
something different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I do take opportunities, learning opportunities, very precious. I think those are a privilege to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And I love the fact that I can do a lot of different things, but I appreciate as I get older that I'm honing in on what's really my jam. And I'll be like, that's not me. You should talk to such and such. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? Or no, that's not me. Let me refer you. Now that's the thing that kind of burns my biscuits is when I can talk to somebody and they'll say, hey, I want to bring you in on this project as a sub. And I'm like, but you don't do none of this shit though. Like, why
mm.
are you bringing me as a sub? Like, and I think that that's important, that sometimes we don't do the best of yielding. Like, hey, this is you. Like, you need to do this. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I wish that a lot more of us in the game would do that versus I could do it all. I was laughing because I was looking at somebody page the other day. They do everything from credit repair to event planning. Like I'm
And
not lying.
catering, and they have a design business. I know
I was
several
like,
people who do that.
what the hell? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, pick a lane.
I need you to pick a lane. But as I
Pick
get older, I mean, I get it because when I was younger, I would be like, I could do it all, and I want to make all the money. And now I'm like, I don't need to do everything.
right,
One, I don't need to be the person to do everything. Two, and I want to be able to leverage and give other people other opportunities versus myself.
absolutely, and that goes
Mhm.
into, we talked about legacy
Yep.
earlier. When God takes your last breath and you looking down at us from the heavenly gates. What do you want people to say about Sommer
I
Woods?
sure hope that I get to the heavenly gates. It's always a joke with my friends. They be like, your ass gonna have a layover in hell, right?
Well,
You ain't gonna stay in hell. You just gonna be there for about 2 hours. No, I definitely think I pride myself on not um on living in the now and living my eulogy every day.
mm,
That when I die, like tomorrow, if the Lord just said this is it, I would be pleased. Like I am. I love the fact of being able to pour into young people. Shout out to baby Alex with Midnight Golf. I've enjoyed that. That's been a true blessing and
mm,
an honor to just see young people to do their thing. So I hope people remember me on that legacy of how I love young people. And
mhm,
I think one of the other most important things is that people know that I'm about my people. When I say my people, I'm saying Black people. And I'm
mhm,
very specific about that. I do. I'm very intentional in terms of my subs, from audio visual to
mhm,
graphic design to the printer to catering, like photographer, videographer. Like if I can plug my people into opportunities, I'm going to do that. And I love when they're able to parlay that into something else,
mm,
into something bigger, for them to use that experience or just for them to get a check.
mm,
I was that for me, I think is the true honor is that when it's all said and done, they're gonna say, Summer really loved her people. She really loved young people, and she enjoyed life, and she didn't take it for granted. Because I wake up every day like, ooh, I didn't. My eyes are open. That means that I
amen,
got another time to figure this out and jack some
amen.
stuff up and make some things beautiful. You know what I'm saying?
I um I would have to say from what I know about you over the years that you are definitely living your eulogy. I watch you move across circles, being the exact same person, like I mentioned earlier. I think we were at a Shane Park 30th anniversary show or something like that. And I walked in and you was getting your dance on the dance floor. And I was in the middle of conversation. I'm like, go ahead, Summer. Like dance like it's your last day, baby. And I just love that energy about you. And I think you're what you want for your legacy, you're already living.
I
You're
appreciate
you're
that.
you're already living. So continue to do that. Where can people
Thank
find
you.
you? Like, can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, so because again, this is what I'm saying, janky. So I'm like this janky. So Solution Architects, we do have a website, thesolutionarchitects.com. Not necessarily as much on social. Woods and Watts, we're online, woodswattseffect.com.
Mhm.
We're on social a little bit for Woods and Watts, but also intentional trying to figure out the best way to engage. I mean, y'all be doing y'all stuff though. Okay, shout out to y'all. I'll be like, okay, because I listen.
It's
I'll be
work,
like,
baby. It's
look,
work.
for
It's
real,
work.
for
It's
real.
work. I just be
So
trying.
yes, we are. We are definitely online. I'm on social media as well. Through Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Which a lot of times I kind of do some personal branding to that for both of my businesses, and then trying to do the podcast thing like you as
Well,
well. That
give a
hopefully we
shout
can try
out.
to
Tell us about your
expand.
podcast. Tell us
That's
about it.
right. I need motivation. See, this is motivation. This is great. But no, my best friend and I had this idea to start a podcast a couple years ago called Black People Shit. And the concept of it is to talk about things that Black people just don't talk about that we should, right? If
Right.
it's from, your CPAP that you got to sleep with your man who got a CPAP, all I'm just saying. Because the first time that happened, I was like, what is you doing, Dark Vader? Dark Vader,
I
what's going
mean,
on? Is you about
anybody
to
listening
die?
just to Google that right
Is
quick.
you is you about to die? Oh, wait a minute. Also, when you put this on, that's it. Don't try to get none, nothing. That's we done. But I'm just, like all the way down to,
Oh man.
you
Where
know,
when is the podcast? Where how can they
girl.
find
So
it? What?
we are on social. We're looking to actually kind of to launch it more like in April. We did do a couple of episodes where we were talking specifically about HBCU stuff, but people follow me on social, Sommer Woods, SOMMER. Once we launch it, we absolutely will continue to not launch it for real. We just kind of, how the blacks
Testing
do.
the waters. We just testing
Listen,
the
we
waters.
just
Couple
testing
little,
it. But
see what the interest is.
yeah, but we want to be able to have some comfortable dialogue and conversations and environment for us to be able to hopefully learn from each other and grow from each other as well.
Well, I absolutely love it. Black people shit. We'll make sure we put that in the description. We'll post the video. I want everybody to follow Summer Woods at all things social media and make sure you keep up with her. Thank you, Summer, for being here on today, gracing us with your presence
Oh,
and all your
so
jewels.
excited.
I
That was
just,
so fun.
I'm so glad you were able to come on. It means a lot to me. We have just crossed paths so many times. And so for you to be a part of our first season is just, a dream come true. So I appreciate it.
Well, I'm honored, and I love you and your husband and your baby. Y'all is family. I love seeing how you and your husband work in this space. It is pure, beautiful energy, and y'all just so cute and just be doing y'all thing. It is one of those inspirations, like, oh, let me give me a boo that want to be out here working together. You know what I'm saying? So no, I do appreciate you, and I appreciate your spirit. And whenever I call, I'll be like, hey, then here's an idea, or hey, Nina, I'm about to refer somebody to you. You be like, okay. And then when
Let's
it's
do it.
over, they be like, oh, I'm so happy you recommended. I'll be like, yeah, she that deal. So it's always a beautiful thing to see your name and to hear your name, and most importantly, to see you and your amazing husband and y'all doing amazing things for
Thank
sure.
you, Summer.
I
Give
love
it up
y'all.
for
I went and
Summer
got
Woods.
my ginger too. I went and got my
Oh,
ginger.
did you? Oh, good, because the ginger is everything. It will change your life. Okay, it will change your life. Right. We did have a whole gender conversation. That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show. Give it up for Summer Woods, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of All Things Behind the Scenes podcast, where we discuss all things events and entrepreneurship. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified of each new episode. You can also follow us on All Things BTS Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. We welcome all comments and suggestions. So let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. So until next time, remember that the only thing that you can guarantee about an event and life is that it will change. Be blessed.